Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am your host, John Campea, and this is a companion video. What is a companion video? Well, I'm glad that you asked to see every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We save time to take live questions. However, we don't always have time to get around to all of the live questions that get sent in, but I want to make sure those questions get answered, so I gather up those questions and we address them here on companion videos. And we got questions today that are left over from this morning's show, Tuesday, March the 5th. A bunch of questions we didn't get around to, so let's not waste any time and get right to it. And we're going to start things off today with Javier Rios 405, who writes, should I temper my expectations for Captain Marvel? Well, it all depends. See, here's the thing. Some people, like whenever there's a new comic book movie or whatever, they just like, oh my God, this is going to be the godfather of comic book movies. This is going to be the Avengers and the Dark Knight and Logan all rolled into one. If that's your expectations, then yes, you need to temper your expectations. If your expectations are, I'm going to go to the movies and see a good, fun, entertaining movie, then you're good. Then you're good. But if you are going in expecting a mind-blowingly crazy experience, which is a lot of people, because honestly, whenever I go see a movie, whether it's an Aquaman, or whether it's a Captain Marvel, or whether it's whatever, inevitably I come out and people ask me, this happens every time. They ask me, is it better than The Dark Knight? Why does it have to be better than The Dark Knight? There's a lot between bad and Dark Knight. Like, why can't it just be good? Or if it's a Marvel film, is it better than Infinity War? Is it better than Civil War? Well, why does it have to be that good? Captain Marvel's a good movie. It's not in the upper crust of the top, like, say, 5 MCU movies. It doesn't belong on that level. To me, it belongs safely on the level of, like, the original Ant-Man, of Doctor Strange. Really good, solid movies, but are not, like, knocking on the door of greatest comic book movies of all time. If your expectation is greatest comic book movie of all time levels, temper your expectations. Otherwise, I think you're good. All right. Maya Demi writes, so, John, why did you hate the Captain Marvel movie if it's not as good as Godfather? Thank you, Maya. If it's not as good as Godfather, you must hate it. LOL. By the way, Gul Dukat is my favorite right after Spock. That conversation came up the other day. Me and Robert were talking about, I can't remember what character it was. Oh, it was the Cardassian versus Kardashians. There was the Kardashians versus Cardassians question that came up, and we started talking about Gul Dukat. Honestly, it was one of my favorite characters on Deep Space Nine. I really like that character a lot. And I'm glad to know it was your favorite, Maya. All right, next up. Aaron H. Which do you like more, Ant-Man and the Wasp or Captain Marvel? I like Captain Marvel more than Ant-Man and the Wasp. I have it on the same level as Ant-Man, and I prefer Ant-Man over Ant-Man 2, also known as Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, yeah, I would say I like Captain Marvel more than... And I liked Ant-Man and the Wasp. I did. I liked it. It's a good little movie. But it wasn't quite as good as the original Ant-Man. And like I say, I put Captain Marvel on the level of, like, say, the original Ant-Man. Quite good, just not upper echelon. Schnip writes, just finished moving into my new house. Congratulations, Schnip. Finally unboxed all my Blu-rays. I'm sad because I don't want physical media to go away. Comfort me, Robert. Well, unfortunately, Robert's not here right now. But, you know, I'll tell you what Robert would tell you, what I've been telling other people. Blu-ray may be dying, but that doesn't mean your Blu-ray collection is going to go anywhere. You will still own it. You still have it. It'll still be there for you to watch and enjoy if you take care of it for, you know, many, many years to come. So don't worry about that. Yeah, in the coming years, it's going to become more difficult to get the content you want on Blu-ray because, you know, it's a dying medium. It is going away. We've seen that. But that doesn't mean your collection's going away anywhere. So add to your collection while you can. And then don't worry about it. No one's going to come in the middle of the night and steal your collection unless, you know, literally a thief sneaks into your house in the middle of the night and steals your collection. Let's see. Give Luigi a Ring writes, hey guys, MCU plot hole. In Iron Man, Coulson spends the whole film coming up with the acronym SHIELD. However, in Captain Marvel, 10 plus years earlier, it's already in place. Logo on the hat. That's not a plot hole. That's a... What's the best way to... It's certainly not a plot hole. It is a inconsequential detail inconsistency. An inconsequential detail inconsistency. That's different from a plot hole. And by the way, it ain't new Now, I mean, remember in the original Ant-Man, they were like SHIELD, they were at the Triskelion like 20 years earlier, and they were at SHIELD headquarters. Not like, so this has been an inconsequential detail inconsistency for a long time. It ain't new with Captain Marvel. Let's see. EJ Tan writes, Variety just published a review for Captain Marvel. I've heard about this. However, it's filled with massive spoilers. How could they do this, John? Now the trolls are armed. I have not read the Variety article myself, but I've seen a few other people mentioning that Variety's review is riddled with spoilers. Now, I haven't read it yet myself, so I can't speak to the validity of that. Like, I might read their review and go, well, yeah, it gives some things away, but it's nothing that should be considered a spoiler, or maybe it is. Maybe it's brutally overt and just brutally destructive to somebody who hasn't seen the movie yet and ruining their experience. I don't know yet. I still have to read it. I do not understand how, especially major publications, like Forbes has been accused of this before, and rightfully so. Forbes has done some terrible, terrible stuff in their reviewers writing a review that gives away major spoilers. One of the great examples of this, it's not the only thing, but it's just a perfect example of it, is when The Last Jedi was out, and love or hate The Last Jedi, they reveal in the review, oh yeah, and Yoda shows up and talks to Luke. It's like, that's supposed to be a major surprise to the audience. And you're just putting it in your review. No spoiler warning or anything. I don't understand how a major publication like Variety or Forbes, who have, it's not like one writer writes it and just hits publish and that's it. They have editorial process. So that means it has to go through several rounds of approval. How big spoilers like that get through is beyond me. Now, again, I'm not speaking directly to the Variety situation because I haven't read it yet myself. But if it is bad, then I just don't understand how something like that happens. It's just, there's no excuse for it. It shouldn't happen. All right. D-Day08 writes, do you think IMDb will ever bring back their message boards? They were such a great resource to discuss certain elements of films. I don't know. I honestly thought I abandoned and gave up on the IMDb chat boards years ago. Like years ago. It just became a cesspool of misinformation and trolling, and I found it kind of pointless. So I honestly don't know if they still do have any kind of a resemblance of their chat boards. Let me bring that up right now. IMDb. Yeah, it doesn't look, I don't see the chat board for it. Hey, if it's gone, in my opinion, good riddance. There's lots of great places to go and discuss movies and talk movies and stuff like that. I just found IMDb kind of became a little bit of, through no fault of IMDb's, but it just kind of became a cesspool of stuff that wasn't constructive to film fandom. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. So I don't know. I got to imagine at some point they'll experiment with some things to try to have community while having safeguards in place for community. So I don't know. It's difficult to say at this point. Let's see. Zachary Buckler writes, thoughts on Beautiful Boy, wonderful film. I love the father-son relationship between Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet. It's on Amazon if you haven't seen it. Yeah, I was a little bit late to the party, especially considering how dying I was to see it. Like I saw the previews for it and I just lost my mind, and then it took me like a month to see it after it was available. It was crazy, but solid film. Some people would ask me actually if I thought it like got snubbed for some legitimate Oscar conversation. Where it sat with me was it was one of those films where, you know, if there are a couple of nominations it could get that I'd go, okay, yeah. But not that if they don't get those nominations, I would think, hey, something's up. Nothing like that. Like, if it got some awards consideration, I would have been, okay, that's all right. But by not getting it, didn't make me raise an eyebrow. I mean, it's one of those movies. Like, the problem here is there are a lot of people who only see so many movies a year. Like 15 or 20 movies a year, which I think is generous for an average film goer, right? So the notion of if a movie's good, it deserves award consideration. Well, there's an upper crust, there's an upper tier of the movies that come out per year. And then there's very good, but not necessarily awards worthy. And again, it's all subjective. It's still all subjective, whether you've seen 20 movies a year or 200 movies in a year. It's still all subjective one way or the other. But yeah, it's one of those films to me where it was very, very, very good. And if it got some awards consideration, great. But if it doesn't, no big deal. It didn't really insist on any. You know what I'm saying? At least that's how I kind of saw it. Okay. Luke1234 writes, don't forget the waffle iron, hashtag oh toaster lover. Of course, I was going back to the, hey, if I want to plug in a toaster and stick my dick in it for a cheap buzz, that's my business. Now, a little bit on that. Waffle iron, that sounds a lot more painful. That one sounds a lot more painful. I think I'll take a pass on the waffle iron, Luke. All right, Dan M. writes, over under 50% Banner is in Black Widow movie. Well, couple things. Number one, right now there is no such thing as a Black Widow movie. There has been no official announcement of a Black Widow movie. It's not officially happening right now. Now, that could change any minute. That announcement could get made any minute. But as of right now, there is no Black Widow movie. Whether Banner could appear in it or not, I mean, it's really tough to even have a wild guess when we have other movies coming out before that one ever gets to us. Like, it's one thing if Black Widow was coming, in next week, and we were taking a guess as to whether Banner would be in it because they had a love interest developing in Age of Ultron, which I thought was really sweet. But we've got so many movies coming out before Black Widow ever comes out, like minimum 2. And one of them is a major movie, Endgame. So we got Endgame coming out. We got Spider-Man Far From Home. And then there might be 1 or 2 more before Black Widow ever comes out. So it's really tough to guess at this point. So right now, I'm going to guess under 50%. But that's a number that could really change drastically depending on what happens in Endgame. So let me take another crack at that after we've seen Endgame and got a better idea about where the universe is by the time a Black Widow movie will have come out. Because the universe in the MCU is going to be a very different place after Endgame than it is right now. So let's wait and see on that. Okay, Koba writes, rewatched Thor: The Dark World yesterday. I think that movie gets more hate than it deserves when compared to other MCU movies. Well, here's the thing. I've never thought Thor: The Dark World was a demonstrably bad movie. I just always considered it a significant step down from what I consider to be the brilliance of the original Thor. There are absolutely some good elements in Thor: The Dark World. A lot of stuff between Thor and Loki, the mom, Frida, I think it was Frida. Was that Rene Russo's character's name? I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, the mom and them losing their mom and all that kind of stuff. There's some really good stuff in there. But, for me, at any rate, it was such a step down from the original Thor that I couldn't help but be kind of disappointed with it. That doesn't mean I didn't think it was still good, but just disappointed because the first one was so freaking amazing. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I guess it's hard to say. I think, though, when a lot of people think of Thor: The Dark World, you generally think of one of the lower tiers of the quality of the MCU. You got your Winter Soldier, Avengers, Civil War, upper tier. Then you got some good films, like really good films. Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, Black Panther, Captain Marvel is a new one that goes in there. Not in the upper crust, but still quite good. Then you get down into okay movies. Pretty good, okay. Movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp 2 that I enjoyed, but not as good as Ant-Man or those other ones. And I kind of would, me personally, I put Thor: The Dark World in that category. And then you got your bottom rung, which might only be inhabited by one MCU movie, and that might be Iron Man 2. But by my opinion, at any rate. Everybody will have different rankings for theirs, I'm sure. So they 4 distinct kind of categories of MCU films. And I don't think Thor: The Dark World belongs in that bottom one, where right now, to me, only one film lives, and that's Iron Man 2. I think it lives in the one just above that. So maybe it does get a little bit too much hate. Maybe it doesn't get enough. It all depends on the viewer, I guess, Koba. But I generally agree. I think it gets a little bit more criticism than it deserves, but that's just my opinion. All right. Dr. Panders writes, my wiener dog, Winnie, I have 2 dachshunds myself. Had surgery. Oh no, had surgery last night. So today we're just laying down, watching you guys talk movies. Because she loves hearing all of your voices. Well, that's because Winnie knows the voice of another wiener dog owner. And I own 2 Dachshunds. I own 2 Dachshunds myself. And they just know the voice of somebody who loves Dachshunds. And so I hope Winnie feels better. I'm so sad that, well, I mean, clearly it must have gone pretty good if she had surgery last night and you're able to have her at home today. So clearly it went well. I hope your dog feels good, or at least much better here really soon, Dr. Panders. All right. Zombatron 5678 writes, tagging off a question John answered on Saturday, I showed my friend her first ever MCU movie, Infinity War, and she loved it. Now we're planning a 2-day straight Marvel marathon for Endgame. You know, so this is coming off, I can't remember, it might have been you, Zombatron, it might have been somebody else, asking, you know, there's a criticism with the MCU, and every film franchise has some criticisms. One of the criticisms of the MCU is that it's so all interconnected that you can't watch, the films just rely on each other too much. Like you can't just jump into the MCU and start watching it without starting at the beginning and watching it all. And what I said on the show the other day was, I don't agree with that. Because I think there are a lot of MCU films that you can just step into, watch, and even if you've known nothing else about the MCU, you'll catch on to what's happening, and you'll get the basic idea of the overall story, what's going on. You may not get all the nuances that do rely on past films, but to just be able to go in, watch, learn it, and appreciate that movie for what it is, I think you're fine. I think Infinity War was a movie that you could just walk into, know nothing else about the movie, watch it, and appreciate it. I think that's the type of movie. And that's a great example. Like you just said it yourself. You had a friend do that. And they were, now, I think Endgame, I haven't seen Endgame yet, but I'm having a hard time imagining that that Endgame is a movie you're going to be able to watch without having watched Infinity War. Like maybe it is. Maybe it is. I'm just having a hard time imagining walking into Endgame without having seen Infinity War. So that might be maybe the one big truism to that criticism about it being reliant on other things. But other than that, I think most Marvel movies you just can sit down and watch. And I think the same can be said of the DCEU. Like I think you can walk in, you can watch Batman versus Superman without having watched Man of Steel. And I think you can watch Justice League. It helps if you've seen if you've seen Batman versus Superman, but I don't think it's required that you see Batman versus Superman in order to go and watch Justice League. Nor do I think it's a requirement that you watch Batman versus Superman before watching Wonder Woman. I think there's a lot, or Aquaman. Aquaman is very much a standalone film too, even though there's a slight reference to the wider DCEU. So yeah, for the most part, I think most of the comic book movies today you can just watch cold and be fine. Except for maybe Endgame. We'll see how that one turns out. All right, thanks for that, Zombatron. Okay, Orange Hand writes, more trustworthy, Littlefinger or Varys? Oh, I'd go Varys. Yes, I'd go Varys. Littlefinger is a rat that you cannot trust for anything. Not to mention he dead. He dead, so you don't even have to worry about it, Orange Hand. Brian Esparza writes, so tired of seeing these man babies that bitch and moan about Captain Marvel and now seeing them say it didn't deserve an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes before they've even seen it. Hey, look, there are always going to be people who have a pre-existing agenda. For whatever reason, they want to bring their own political baggage into things and moan and bitch and complain and blah, blah, blah. It's a part of the reality of life. It's always going to be there. And you just have to learn to ignore it. And that's what I'm trying to do, is learn how to ignore the little cupcake, cryberry, baby, fragile man babies. I mean, that's pretty much all it is. Garrett Martin writes, as cringy as the prequels are, I love the Jedi/Sith conflict, and I hope the Benioff Weiss movies give us more of that while expanding the universe. You see, the only way they can do that, I think, there may be other ways that I'm just not thinking of, probably many other ways I'm not thinking of, but the only way I see clear that's obvious is to go Old Republic. Go Old Republic, and you can do all the Jedi Sith stuff you want. You don't have to worry about continuity. You don't have to, because it's so far in the past, it's hardly touches what's going on today anyway. So you could do that. It becomes problematic if you want to try to do Jedi Sith stuff moving forward. For obvious reasons, that's problematic. But you go back 5,000 years into the history of Star Wars, so far removed, you don't have to worry about continuity problems. You don't have to worry about it being a prequel per se. You can just dive right in and build your own mythos and do all that kind of stuff that you can do. And guys like Benioff and Weiss can probably do that very well. I must say, I'm starting to get a bit frustrated, though, not knowing what it is they're working on. Like, they announced their involvement ages ago. So why haven't we at least heard by now what it is they're working on? Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like they just announced them yesterday and I'm like, oh, I'm so impatient. But it was ages ago that they've been announced to be involved here, and we still know nothing. I'm starting to get a little bit impatient. But if they do go Old Republic, and I know a lot of people will be very, very happy if they do, but if they go Old Republic, that opens up a huge door for those types of Jedi Sith stories that you can do. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit challenging, but that way it would be really easy for them. Ben Hayusa writes, Toy Batman, I'm Batman. Shazam, get him, Batman. This trailer left me with smiles. Just one more month. Dude, I cannot even begin to tell you how excited I am for Shazam. Everything, right from the... First of all, I thought a Shazam idea was a nifty idea. Then when they cast Zachary Levi, I remember the show that I did when they announced Zachary Levi. And I'm like, this is great. Because it told us a little bit, by casting Zachary Levi, it told us a little bit of what they were going to be going for. And what kind of movie it was going to be. What kind of DNA the movie was going to have. You know what I'm saying? And I think they're hitting all the right notes. I think they're going for the exact kind of movie you should be going for. I think DC is broadening their appeal to a lot more of the audience, which is a good thing. Now, it's all about will they execute? Will the movie end up being good? I think it will. I am ridiculously excited for it. And that new trailer just pumped up the energy level even more. So I'm pretty stoked for it. Ben follows up with, also wrestling related, King Kong Bundy has passed away? Hold on a second. I did not hear that. BBC, WWE legend King Kong Bundy dies at 61. Oh, no. I had not heard that. Hold on a second. Just give me 1 second, guys. Because he was like, when I was a little kid watching wrestling, I mean, King Kong Bundy, dead at 61. They did not announce a cause of death. We lost a legend, a man I consider family. Rest in peace, Chris. Harrow wrote, using the wrestler's real name, Christopher Paulies. Oh my gosh. Oh, that is so sad. Hulk Hogan tweeted, overwhelmed by King Kong Bundy's passing. Only great memories. R.I.P. big man until we meet again. Oh, that is a shame. I used to love watching that dude. He was such a great entertainer. That's really sad to hear. Thank you for sharing that with me, Ben. I appreciate that. Jacob Ibarra writes, I think it's cool that Djimon Hounsou is in both Captain Marvel movies. Yeah, because for those, I mean, they haven't shown his face, but for anybody who knows anything about Djimon Hounsou, when you hear the wizard Shazam, once Billy gets off the thing, say my name so my power can flow to you, whatever the exact lines are. Anybody who knows Djimon Hounsou instantly recognizes Djimon Hounsou's name. And of course, he was in Guardians of the Galaxy and he's appearing in Captain Marvel. And yeah, Djimon Hounsou is in the old traditional Captain Marvel, now known as Shazam, and he's in the new Captain Marvel as well. He's in both. And by the way, he's in Aquaman too. So Djimon Hounsou's just tearing it up with the comic book movies, man. Djimon Hounsou's all over the place. I have been a big fan of Djimon Hounsou ever since my favorite Steven Spielberg film, Amistad. He was in Amistad. That's what made him a household name. I've been a huge fan of his ever since, and I just think the guy's amazing. Fryapan90 writes, can you see Spider-Man becoming the new leader of the Avengers at some point? No. Or is it not possible due to the Sony Marvel deal? Well, no, it's not possible because he's a child. He's a child with incredible power and a great moral compass, but he is a child nonetheless. No, I cannot see high school student Peter Parker being the leader of the Avengers. No. Like, could you see military veteran War Machine? Can you see Don Cheadle's character taking orders from a child? No. You think Black Widow is going to take marching orders and strategy orders from and direction and leadership from a child? No. You think Doctor Strange is going to take his lead from a child? No. Peter Parker's a child. He's a high school student. No, and it has nothing to do with the Sony Marvel deal. It's just that, no, I cannot see Spider-Man like, hey, unless you're talking about ever. Like, hey, in 12 years, could Spider-Man be the leader of the Avengers? Maybe. But like in the immediate future, like in the next 2 to 3 years? No, he's a kid. He's just a kid who knows nothing about battle or tactics or strategy or leadership or anything like that. So no, I cannot see Spider-Man becoming the leader of the Avengers unless you're talking about ever. Anything can happen ever, but in the immediate future, no, I can't see that happening. And I love Spider-Man. It's just that of all the things that make him great, leadership, strategy, tactics, battle combat, all that, he's a high school kid. He's a high school kid. No, I don't see that happening. Anyway, The Insight writes, do you think drive-ins will be popular again? I don't think so, which sucks because I love drive-ins. Kind of like the way people love Blu-rays. I love drive-ins. They're fun. They're kind of communal experiences. They're great. I love drive-ins. Especially you get like a minivan and pack it full of friends and you go and you got all your food in your car and you're hanging out. It's great. I love drive-ins. But the reality is it's cost prohibitive because you need a huge chunk of land. You only operate a couple of hours a day. You've got to be out of the city. So you got to be in an inconvenient location because there's no like football field size, just empty lot sitting around the middle of metropolitan areas, right? So it's extremely cost prohibitive. And I think it's just a dying thing. I mean, it's almost gone. They're almost all gone now, which sucks. But man, I would love it if there was a resurgence of drive-ins, but I do not sadly see it happening. I hope it does, though. That would be great. Robert writes, if ROTS was the only prequel, I'm going to guess prequel Revenge of the Sith. If Revenge of the Sith was the only prequel, would it be more liked? Boy, that's an interesting question, Robert. Because while I also do not like Revenge of the Sith, I will say, to me, it is the way I describe Revenge of the Sith, I describe it as the least offensive of the prequels. And it's got some upside, much like I think The Force Awakens has some upside. Even the very maligned Attack of the Clones, there are some highlights in the movie. There are highlights in the movie. Every bad movie has some strengths. And Revenge of the Sith certainly has them too. Would it be more liked if it wasn't for the other ones? I've never really thought about it, but you know what? I'm just going to guess yes. I'm going to guess yes. I don't think it becomes a beloved movie like the original trilogy or anything like that, but maybe less disdain towards it if it wasn't for the other ones, particularly Attack of the Clones. Maybe. It's an interesting thought. I haven't really thought about it. Aaron H. writes, my biggest movie pet peeve as a sports fan is when actors play a sport in a movie, they are wildly unathletic and look like they haven't seen a ball in their life. Takes me right out of the movie. I'm trying to think of something that would be like that. I can't really think of one. I mean, Will Ferrell playing basketball in whatever the name of something. I can't remember. What was the name of the basketball movie he did? I can't remember. There's that. But then again, that was supposed to be a silly comedy, so whatever. That doesn't really count, I suppose. I mean, the way you're describing it, Aaron, the way you're describing it, that would pull me out of a movie too. But I gotta be honest, I can't think of any really good examples off the top of my head of when that's happened. So, yeah, I don't know. You know what? Do me a favor. Send me an email or something with some examples of movies that really did that badly and like really. I'd just be curious about that. Okay, let's go. Eddie Garcia writes, "What do you think about Blade coming to the MCU with Wesley Snipes?" Well, I don't believe he is. Now there are completely unsubstantiated reports going around that says Disney is in talks with Wesley Snipes to return for R-rated Blade movies. It might be true. Let's not call it an impossibility. We've seen crazier things happen. Right now, I'm going to stay cautious and say I'm not buying it, but I'm not going to say it's an impossibility. It could possibly happen, I guess. But right now I would guess no. They've been saying that for years. Wesley Snipes going to be turning 57 years old here pretty soon. He comes with a significant amount of baggage. Wesley Snipes also has not been a relevant name or a relevant actor for a long time. The last thing he was even remotely in that had even the slightest bit of relevance was, I believe, the Expendables. Oh, let's see. And I think it was Expendables 3 he was in, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Expendables 3. Was that the one with... yes, it was. That was the one with Wesley Snipes. That was 2014. That was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Now, he's been in a couple of other things. Oh, I forgot he was in Chirac. But, again, not a relevant thing. Yeah, he really hasn't been in anything really relevant in forever. There was the Expendables 3. That was 5 years ago. And then the last thing he was in before that was a number of years earlier. It was that kind of Western thing he did called The Gallows Walkers, which nobody saw. And was quite bad, if I remember correctly. So, yeah. There are hardcore fans, I think. Hardcore fans who remember Blade and Blade 2 and, unfortunately, Blade Trinity, who might have some nostalgia, fond memories of that, but that does not represent nearly the majority of the movie-going audience at all. That represents a small portion of the movie-going audience. I just don't see there being as much, like, some big nostalgia play on that, nor has Wesley Snipes maintained any relevance. Now, what is a completely different question is, would I be down for it? The answer to the question of would I be down for it is yes. I'd be down for it. I would be curious to see Wesley Snipes come back as a clearly older vampire now and see him take up the blade sword once again. But I don't represent, generally speaking, the big, wider movie-going audience, and I just don't know that, a Disney would see a lot of value in that. So I've seen the reports. I'm just saying right now I don't buy the reports. And by the way, all these reports are coming from one source. It's the same place that said that Deadpool is 110% going to be in the MCU. And again, their quote, it's the same source. Sources close to us say, and it very well could be true. It may be true. I'm just saying right now I'm not buying it. So, yeah, I don't buy it at this point. But who knows? It ain't impossible. And it would be kind of interesting. Okay, let's see. Luke Blackwell writes, John, what film do you think was better? Jungle Book 2016 or Mowgli? Oh, that's easy. Jungle Book by 50,000 miles. Jungle Book 2016 or Mowgli 2018, and what is your opinion on both movies? Jungle Book is fantastic. Mowgli, at best, was okay. And that pains me to say because I am a big Andy Serkis fan. I love Andy Serkis. I remember the first time I got to meet him, I kind of geeked out a little bit because it's Andy Serkis, And I love him, and he directed Mowgli. That ended up getting dumped by the studio and just dumped onto Netflix. And then I watched it and like, oh, that's why it was dumped on Netflix. It's not that good. It's not bad. It's not terrible. It's not some train wreck of a movie. I just didn't think it was very good, which sucks because I love Andy Serkis. But yeah, to me, there's no comparison between the two. Jungle Book is the vastly superior film. Again, that's just my opinion, but you're asking my opinion. I thought Mowgli at best was okay, but nowhere near the same quality as Jungle Book, which is why I believe Warner Brothers decided to pull the trigger on it and dump it. I mean, I think that became clear. That's why Warner Brothers dumped it, because it just could not compare to Jungle Book. So they did decide, you know what, we're not even going to bother trying. Just dump it onto Netflix and let's move on. And that's kind of unfortunately what they did. James Peter writes, someone was going to ask this, may as well be me. Which did you like more, Captain Marvel or Wonder Woman? Somebody asked me that earlier. I kind of put them both on the same level. I put Wonder Woman in that really good level as well as a Doctor Strange, as a whatever. See, if I was going to kind of compare the DCEU with the MCU, upper tiers, then with the MCU, you got that upper tier, which is, Avengers, Winter Soldier, Civil War. For the DCEU, again, this is just my opinion, their upper echelon is Man of Steel. To me, that's a top 10 comic book movie of all time. I know that a lot of people don't like it. That's fine. I'm comfortable with that. I think it's a top 10 comic book movie of all time. Anyway, but as in the MCU, we're just below that top tier. You got a really good quality level of film in there where you got your Doctor Stranges, your Ant-Mans, your Black Panthers, whatever. And I think the equivalent to that in the DCU would be Wonder Woman. Because I think Wonder Woman's probably the second best DCU movie they've made so far. I think it's better than Aquaman. I think it's better than Justice League. I think it's better than Batman versus Superman. I think it's certainly better than Suicide Squad. So you got it up there. And that's kind of the same tier that I have Captain Marvel in over here. So I honestly, they're very different films from each other. They're very different films. The only similarity between these movies, other than the fact that they're about these characters who have superpowers and they both happen to have vaginas instead of penises, there's really nothing much else similar between them. They're very, very different types of films. But I feel pretty comfortable saying, yeah, I kind of put them both on the same level. So that's just how I see it. Other than that, they're not really two films to compare because they're so radically different. Let's see. Gabriel Reed writes, Captain Marvel spoiler discussion. Yes, we are doing a Captain Marvel spoiler discussion. And we are going to give everybody the full weekend to see it. So we're going to give everybody Friday to see it, everybody Saturday to see it, everybody Sunday to see it. So we're going to do our spoiler discussion on Monday evening / late afternoon. We haven't nailed down a specific time yet, but Monday. Again, late afternoon, early evening is when we're going to do, Pacific Standard Time, is when we're going to do our Captain Marvel spoiler discussion. So we are doing it. Keep your eyes open for it. All right. Dimsum05 writes, you always say that Marvel is really good at developing one thing, characters. Do you think Captain Marvel continues the tradition? Yes. There are, like every other film, there are shortcomings to Captain Marvel. But the character development isn't one of them. The whole movie basically focuses on the character development and going through the journey with Carol Danvers. From this powerful being who has no sense of where she comes from or who she is or what she is. And then her past becoming unveiled. I mean, this is all stuff we see in the trailer. So I'm not giving anything away. Gradually learning more and more about who and what she is. And the way they develop that is fabulous. It's really well done. And so I would say yes. I would say that's one of the strengths of the film is definitely the character development, particularly of Nick Fury and Carol Danvers. They both do a really good job on both those fronts. All right. Colby Harris writes, how do you go to a Hollywood premiere? You need to be invited. You have to be invited. So if you get invited to a Hollywood premiere, then you can go to a Hollywood premiere. Never mind, I still don't get likes writes, watch how none of these YouTubers will make videos talking about the 91%, but if it goes down, they'll start spamming the trash talk vids. Oh, they will. I mean, I think, look, when I was checking the Captain Marvel Rotten Tomatoes ratings, it started at like 83, then it went to like 92, then it went down to like 86, 85, then it went up to 91. The last time I checked, it was at like 88. Let me check right now. I'm going to check it right now. Last time I checked, it was at 88, and right now, as of this recording, it's 88. What I said on my show earlier today was, I see Captain Marvel settling in the low to mid 80s. That's where I think Captain Marvel's going to settle. It's going to settle somewhere, because a lot of times we see it start high or start low, and it can adjust its position. If it starts really high, you can expect it, usually, not all the time, you can usually expect it to come down a bit. If it starts really low, you can usually expect it to come up a bit. Captain Marvel started really high 80s, low 90s. I said on the John Campea show earlier today, I expect Captain Marvel to settle in the low to mid 80s, which is still great. But I'll tell you what, the thing is, this movie could have 100%. And all the fragile little cupcake, crybaby beta males out there would whine and complain with their go-to fallback cop-out position. Disney paid all the critics to give it good reviews. Okay, moron. You just keep on believing that in the Tooth Fairy. You just go ahead and believe that. So it could get 100 and they're going to complain. It could get 91 and they're going to complain. It could be 80 and they're going to complain. It could be 40 and they'll figure out a way to go, see, or whatever, right? So, but yeah, don't fool yourself. They're going to be complaining no matter what because they're already politically invested in it. They've already put themselves out there and drawn their line in the sand, and they're going to fall on their sword no matter what. They're going to fall on their sword no matter what. Doesn't matter. They could go and see Captain Marvel and honestly think it's the greatest film ever. It's not the greatest film ever. I'm just saying. If they could go see it and they might think it's the greatest film ever, it won't matter. They're not going to admit that because they've already drawn their line in the sand. They'll still bitch and moan and complain about it because they've invested in it. But it is what it is, so who cares? Who cares? You just worry about you. You go watch it and you like it for your reasons or you dislike it for your reasons. However the movie hits you. This isn't a movie that's for everybody. I can't think of the last film that was a movie for everybody, other than maybe the Mr. Rogers documentary. That one's pretty much for everybody, but no other film is. So you may like it, you may not like it, whatever. Don't worry about what other people are saying about it, good or bad. All right, let's move on here. Joser Mays writes, why toxic fans are destroying geek culture? Well, child psychologists have written that, children, babies, young children, whatever, they're learning to interact with their environment, and they find that to a lot of children, to a child and a baby's mind, they're not trying to be an asshole. It's just to a child and baby's thing, it's like that's one of the ways they've experienced that they can have some effect on their environment. If I scream and throw a tantrum, I have some control over my environment, right? And I think that's true of a segment of fandom is that same mentality. I have no meaning unless I scream and throw tantrums and complain and blah, blah, blah. And so that's what they do. Now, again, I think that's a segment of the thing and not really a big thing that we need to worry about too much. Jim Copeland writes, do you think Sherlock and Holmes release date change? There's not Sherlock and Holmes, it's Sherlock Holmes. Do you think Sherlock Holmes release date changed has to do with the epic failure of Holmes and Watson? Maybe studio wants to distance themselves. Okay, so what Jim is talking about, in case you didn't see the John Campus show earlier today, they have announced that Sherlock Holmes 3 with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law not being directed, this time by the director of the first two, Guy Ritchie. He directed the first two. Apparently, he's not going to be directing the third. They announced that the release date they did set for 2020 has now been bumped a full year to December of 2021. So Jim is asking, do I think they moved to separate itself from Holmes and Watson? No. Because even if they kept the 2020 date, that's 2 full years separated from Holmes and Watson. And by the way, let me just pull up this little number here. Let's see. Holmes and Watson box office. Okay. I don't think anybody saw Holmes and Watson. Grand total, Holmes and Watson made $40 million. Grand total. Worldwide grand total, $40 million. So nobody saw it. Nobody saw it. Everybody's already almost forgotten about it. As a matter of fact, everybody would have already forgotten about it if it wasn't for the way they presented themselves so well at the Razzies this year. Other than that, nobody saw it. So no, it was already going to be 2 years separated. Nobody saw this. Nobody was going to confuse a Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly comedy with what they're doing with the Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. So no, I don't think that had anything. I think it had more to do with the fact that they still don't have a director. That's a pretty big deal. It's hard to progress much on pre-production when you don't have your director on board yet. And since they didn't have their director on board yet, I guess they just felt they had to push because people couldn't lock their schedules down. All right. Alex Hertzman writes, have you seen the Game of Thrones trailer yet? Well, Alex, actually, it was the first thing we talked about on the John Campea show. I'm going to guess, Alex, you came in late on the John Campea show because that was actually the very first thing we talked about on the John Campea show today. Trailer looks great. Let me see if I still have the money shot. I don't think I do, but let me just double check to see if I do. I'm not seeing it anywhere. I must not have it. Is that it? No, that's not it. That's not it. And that's not it. Here I am just wasting time. And when we could be talking about other things. So no, I cannot find the thing I was looking for unless it is in here. Hold on a second. Actually, I did find it. There we go. This was the money shot. This was the money shot for sure. I mean, that's what we call in the production business the money shot. I mean, that scene was great. Very, very dragon heavy in it. I was really surprised that arguably the most popular character in Game of Thrones, Tyrion Lannister, he only had like one quick shot. Like Jorah had more shots in the trailer. The dragons certainly had tons more shots in the trailer. Everybody had more shots in the trailer than Tyrion, which is a little bit surprising to me because, again, he's kind of like one of the most popular characters. But I love the trailer. Very excited. Can't wait to see it. Okay, let's move on here. Javier Belmer writes, I'm conflicted for Captain Marvel. I know I'll enjoy it. Well, you don't know anything. Until you see it, you may not enjoy it. But I've heard, for example, Wonder Woman did it better. And I mostly liked it, but I gotta ask, is it well written and worthy MCU title, or is it underwhelming? No, look, kind of like the first question. If you're going in expecting the next Infinity War, if you're going in expecting the next Captain Marvel, the Winter Soldier, then you'll be underwhelmed. But you shouldn't go in with like the best thing ever as your expectation. If you go in with like, I hope this is as good as like a Doctor Strange or an Ant-Man or a Black Panther or something like that, then I think you're going to be very happy. I think you're going to be happy. The whole thing about, you didn't hear a bunch of people saying Wonder Woman did. You probably heard that from one source out of like 300 critics, but there is no, I was mentioning this earlier, there's no comparison of Wonder Woman to Captain Marvel, and I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I'd say it's kind of on par with Wonder Woman. That's how I see it. So if you liked Wonder Woman, again, it's such a difficult movie. It's such a, not difficult, it's such a different movie that I can't even say if you liked Wonder Woman, you like Captain Marvel, or vice versa, because they're such different films. All I can say is that my overall level of enjoyment of the film was pretty much equal between Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman. Not the best, but good. Quite good. And I think you're going to be happy with it, but again, it's hard to say. Okay, let's move on here. O'Malley writes, Hey John, I live in Las Vegas and I work on the strip near Caesar's Palace. I've been a huge fan of yours for years and I'd love to meet you. Well, hey, listen, man, when I come to Vegas, maybe I'll do a meet and greet. Because, you know, Robert and I are talking about coming out to Vegas in April for CinemaCon. And maybe while we're there, we'll set up there's a big shopping plaza just off the strip where there's a big AMC theater. I'm trying to remember. It's like a big shopping outlet. It's like a huge something gardens. I can't remember. But I go there once in a while when I'm in Vegas. And because they have a Yard House there, a bunch of really good restaurants, and they have the AMC there. And when me and Rob are out there, I maybe will announce doing a meet and greet. See if there's anybody in Vegas who wants to get together and have a drink. We're going to be at the Yard House by that AMC theater or something like that. I don't know that we will. I'm not even sure we're going to go to Vegas. But if we do, I'll keep you guys informed as to when that happens. All right, thanks for that. I'm Upset writes, completely forgot that Triple H was in Blade 3. I know. That movie's so bad. That movie is so bad. Hannibal King! Oh my God. And what was with like Justin Timberlake's wife with the lightsaber bow and arrow? Like, what was that all about? She had a lightsaber. I'm not kidding. She has a lightsaber. And man, they just did that movie to try to make a spin-off movie with Ryan Reynolds and why am I forgetting Justin Timberlake's wife's name? It starts with a J, I think. Anyway, whatever. They were desperate. They only did that movie to try to desperately set up a spin-off series, and that's never a good idea. But yeah, Triple H was one part of that. It was terrible. Internet Handler writes, I respect your opinion, John. Thank you. Hashtag no fucks given. Yeah, that's my big piece of advice for anybody. I get asked quite often for advice by people who want to start up doing their own blogs, YouTube channels, podcasts, and they ask me advice. And one of the things that I always tell people is, here's the thing, whether you're talking about cell phones, whether you're talking about movies, whether you're talking about music, whether you're talking about cars, whether you're talking about sneakers. I got friends who do some sneaker podcasts and stuff like that. You have to immediately come to peace with yourself that you will not give a fuck what people think about your opinion. Because the moment you care in the least what people think about your opinion is the moment you're not going to give your actual opinion. And all you've got that makes you you is your actual opinion. And that's all I ever give. So that's why, I keep going back to Blade Runner because it's a good example of this. Everybody loves Blade Runner, but I don't. So now, if I cared about what other people thought about my opinion, I would just go, oh yeah, Blade Runner is great, because I don't want to look bad. But then I'm not being honest. I'm not actually giving my actual opinion. And if I'm not giving my real opinion, I got nothing to offer. So that's why I'm going to say things you agree with, and I'm going to say things you don't agree with, and that's all good. My job and your job as a content creator is not to say things that people agree with. Your job as a content creator and my job as a content creator is to give your opinion, whatever it is, and give it in such a way that your audience better understands why they agree with you and better understands why they disagree with you. It's not about agreeing. It's about communicating your opinion in such a way that even if people disagree with you, they walk away from listening to you or watching you with a sharper, better understanding about why they disagree. And that's the great thing about doing this stuff. And so what I said on the show earlier today is, you've got to not give a fuck what anybody thinks about your opinion. You have to not care in the least what people think about your opinion. And there's a lot of things I care about, but I do not care. Like if I'm going to say what I think about a movie, and I don't care if you agree with my opinion of the movie or disagree with my opinion of the movie or hate my opinion of the movie. It ain't my job to say things you agree with. It's my job to give you my opinion, tell you why I think it, and hopefully present it in such a way that you walk away with a little something more, either understanding why you agree or why you disagree. And if I've accomplished that, like, I've got a number of people who write to me all the time saying, John, I usually disagree with you, but man, I love watching the show. Great! Because it's not about agreeing all the time. So you got to give no fucks. You got to not care what people think about your opinion. Care about a lot of other things, but not about what they think about your opinion, because the moment you do, you're going to stop giving your actual opinion, and then you're dead. So there you go. Anyway, that was Internet Handler. Okay, Jonas Hounsou writes, Avengers versus Star Wars box office. Who wins? Like this year, 2019? Oh, that's easy. It's Avengers this year. It's Avengers this year. Now, you can make an argument, and I've heard people argue with me saying, oh yeah, but John, The Force Awakens has made more money than Infinity War did. Okay, yeah, sure. But this is 2019. The fact that the Force Awakens made more than Infinity War is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. This is 2019. And we've got Endgame coming out and Episode 9. And the fact of the matter right now, at this particular moment, Endgame has a lot more hype going into it than Star Wars Episode 9. And a lot more people looking forward to it. So to me, that's an easy one. I know there's still people who think Star Wars will make more than Avengers Endgame. I just don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening. Now, the funny thing here is, the number one box office movie of the year may not be either Avengers or Star Wars. It might be Lion King. Now, I would put my money on Avengers Endgame, but I'm telling you guys, watch out for Lion King. Lion King could do it. I still think it's going to be Avengers Endgame for the record. But I'm just saying, let's not sleep on that pesky little Lion King. All right. Christopher Hammerich writes, did Captain Marvel make you more excited for Avengers 4? Ooh, yes. Yes, I can say that definitively. Now, whether you think Captain Marvel is the greatest movie ever, or whether you just think Captain Marvel is just okay, one thing I can guarantee it will do. is make you more excited for Avengers Endgame. I can't explain why. You'll have to see it for yourself. And I don't think you have to see Captain Marvel in order to watch Endgame. All right, let's be clear. I don't think you have to see Captain Marvel to see Endgame. I'm just saying, if you watch Captain Marvel, again, without giving away anything, it will make you more excited for Endgame. So I'll just leave it at that. All right, Justin Key's son writes, that's cool. Going to the 40th anniversary of Alien on the big screen tonight in the UK. Excited, such a classic. What are yours and Rob's memories of it? Well, Alien was a little before my time as far as, going to the theaters and everything. Alien, for me, that was my first time seeing Alien was like years after it was out at home on Laserdisc or VHS, something like that. And it was pretty horrific. For a young kid. I actually have more clear memories of watching Aliens, the sequel, which to me might be my second favorite action film of all time. My number one favorite action film of all time is True Lies. My number two favorite action film of all time is Aliens. Absolute classic. Game over, man. I love that movie. So I have more memories of that one, but that is awesome that you get to go watch the 40th anniversary on the big screen. That's cool. That sounds like a good time out, Justin. And all right, that does it, guys. We are now all caught up on all the questions that got sent in earlier today. Thank you guys for being here and watching the show. And thank you to all you guys who had sent in those questions. Never forget, guys. Hey, look, I'm a lot of questions come in. I'm sure once in a while I let one slip through the cracks, and that's my bad, and I apologize. That's happened once in a while, and I'm sure it'll happen in the future. But I do my very best to make sure none of those questions that get sent in get overlooked, and I bring them in here, and we address them here in companion videos. So thanks so much for being here, guys. I appreciate it a great deal. That will do it for me for now. My name's John Campia, and until next time, bye-bye.